I want to welcome everybody. We're going to be doing the astrology natal charts of our 4 candidates. Most of you and many of you have met Leslie already on one of our previous town halls. She is, I think, one of the best in the country and has provided patients and people and really all over the world a different view of how to, as I said to one patient today, to find balance and knowing. Somebody said to me once, well, you don't believe in astrology. I said, no, and I don't believe in the tides that a moon can shift the entire ocean by 6 feet every 6 hours. So yeah, I kind of do believe that we are connected to our planets and the history and the incredible knowledge that has been in place for thousands of years that we can't ignore. So going ahead, Ted will roll out the slides for tonight's talk.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Ted Canova. I host Pat's Genius of Wellness podcast. We're joined today, in addition to Pat, by Leslie Frodema, functional nurse nutritionist at Hopkins Medical Group, Stephen Roberts with Hopkins Medical Group. As Pat said, we have a second Leslie, so we're going to have to do last names. Leslie McGuirk is an acclaimed astrologer, artist. She's been on, I think this is the 3rd town hall she's on, in addition to, maybe it's the 2nd, in addition to a Genius of Wellness podcast. So fascinating conversation that we're going to have. But why don't we get started by updating you on what's happening with the practice?
We are 5 days a week seeing patients, 3 days a week we are in the office. My nurse practitioner, Mara Hines, is there Tuesday and Thursday. I'm there Wednesday, Thursday, and we have telemedicine with Steve, Leslie, and I Monday through Friday. And Leslie is on Monday, just doing an incredible job with our new laser program, cold laser. Some of you, we will be doing it in the future, talking about how light is really providing the healing pathway for many of our patients. And so, yep, we're there and we're moving ahead. We're surviving.
We want to remind everybody that it's now a membership model, Hopkins Medical Group. So in order to continue the care and the services that you've come to expect from Pat and her team, you need to sign up to be a member. And it's $20 a month. Insurance is still accepted. And Pat and her team are giving a discount that if you pay in advance, it's $199 for the year. And you can cancel at any time or with 30 days notice. Go on the website and learn more about it. But you know that the front desk is talking about it more and more when you check out and when you call for an appointment. So Pat has been communicating this in many different channels with folks and clients and patients. So just wanted to remind you of that. As you know, it's a full service practice, everything from infusions to injections, physicals, urgent care, nutrition, cold laser, beamer. We've talked about this in episodes of the Genius of Wellness podcast, but also in these bi-monthly town hall meetings, and of course, aesthetics, and a lot of services for that. Pat, why don't you talk about the patient education that you've stepped up, including the new website that went live a couple of weeks ago?
So I'm really excited about our new website, which is not finalized, but changing the entire front office to an online option so that you can schedule anything you want online, in-office visit, telemedicine visit. You want to schedule a consult and find out what it means to do beamer therapy. You want to find out about the cold laser. You want to do nutrition. You want to understand about herbal medicine. So we're really going to be offering all of that online. We have a really robust brain health program that's been just, really exciting to be involved in. And we're expanding that with another company, Wabi. Detox, your immune system boosting. And so these will all be basically online, and it's like a menu. You can pick with whom you want to discuss what and schedule that appointment. So I'm excited about moving many of your calls to the office to fit yourself in. And we have 2 platforms going right now that's all going to merge into one and make it seamless. And for those of you that have computers, I hope most of you that are online are on your computer, and you'll be able to do that. So it's been a process. We're working with a team in Australia and South Africa, actually, and they're so excited to be working with us in the United States. And we started this process in August when we realized that the virtual world for many of the aspects of our office, front office, would benefit by being online. So, but we are there in the office, as I said, 3 days a week.
And you're communicating in a very timely and relevant fashion with all of your patients through newsletters. We're communicating through the podcast episodes. We've got 19. The 20th one will be posted in the coming weeks. Virtual town halls. This is number 10. So Pat and her team have kept everybody informed since March, when we all started quarantining because of COVID. It's only the third season we're entering when you think about it, when this started a week before spring. So risk assessment calculator. Why don't you talk how this works, Pat?
This is put out by the British Medical Association.org, and it really outlines all the tools that assess your risk. It's quite easy. They're put in place so people can identify what their risk is going back to work in person. Here's some of the things that we know for sure. The universal max do flatten the curve. If you go to the COVID health data, they do projections with mask, gradually letting go of restrictions, and then if there are no restrictions, and they have been able to create the mathematical models for these. So I do want people to, you've got to do the research. So this is a great website. There's a lesson from Japan. They have 127 million people, but less than 2,000 deaths. And why is that? And that's a cultural debate. And there's a lot we have here in our country about masks. And I'm just going to say that while I despise wearing a mask, I understand that it is accepting the fact that we have to limit the viral exposure to all of us, whether you're giving it or receiving it. And the mask will just drop your, we'd all like to get 5 virus particles and kind of get a little immune. But if you have your mask off and you're spewing, you're going to be a spreader event. Just quickly go through why Japan. They have been used to wearing masks for years, since MERS and SARS before. They have an outdoor lifestyle. They keep their windows open all year, so everybody open your doors and windows. And you know what? It's part of the culture. They line up for subways. If you're on a subway in Japan, people don't talk to each other. They would think it would be very rude for you to be interrupting anyone else's space and chatting away, which we all do. They don't shake hands. They bow. And maybe we should start bowing. I'm kind of sick of the elbow. I think I'm going to the bow. And
I thought most of us already bowed to you, Pat.
Yeah, right. Let me get my kids in here. They have an elbow to the left chin. There are things we can learn by what other countries do. In this, some of the tools put out by the different countries for risk reduction framework, risk assessment materials. This is all on the website that I just put up there, and you can read this. We are going to put this up on our website, so you can go through this slowly so we can get to the fun stuff for tonight. I want people to be aware that to shrug off some of our responsibility is to put ourselves into another catastrophic sequence of months. So we've heard a lot about herd immunity, and I want to just at the top slide, we have a couple people. Every person they bump into is potentially infected. So you can see in a very short period of time, the infection spreads to people. And a lot of those people become immune. They become non-transmitters. Other people remain transmitters. This is a slide that highlights how vaccine works, but I really do want to emphasize this is also how the virus in small doses getting to many people. So Japan did a study with 5,000 people between the ages of 15 and 35. They tested them over 3 months. They had 50% convert to positive, but they had no active admissions or infections. So they are creating the equivalent of vaccination by the fact that they never shut down their society, and people are probably getting very small, minute inoculums of the virus, and therefore it's not blowing up in the tinder of the highly vulnerable, and they're very respectful of the vulnerable. So whether you're doing the small dose and wearing your mask, they do know that on the hard surfaces, the virus can last for 28 days, but they've not been able to show that it's an infective virus. It can last on a dollar bill. So I want to just reemphasize the importance of washing hands as part of how we keep this virus at bay. And this will also work for all the other viruses, whether it's influenza, norovirus, retrovirus, RSV, the kids that get the croup and the, difficulty with breathing. So, wash our hands, wear our face mask. And the vitamin D is still a positive, like I like to say. It is one of your protective vitamins. So get your vitamin D up. I'm only bringing this up. This was put out by JAMA in the herd immunity, just so you can see the curve of different organisms and how this is called the R factor, which is how quickly it is transmitted and how many people need to be infected. So as you can see, SARS-CoV-2 is right in the middle. If you look at the H1N1 influenza, that rapidly spread but didn't have the lethality that we have. And then we go all the way up to measles that, you're spreading it all the time and you're shedding the virus for weeks and everybody's getting exposed and few people are actually at high risk for morbidity and mortality. So I did want to get to what this evening is about, which is the election, seeing how our stars are aligning in our lives and how we'll interpret the galaxy tonight. And I'm introducing or bringing back again for our third visit, Leslie McGuirk, our favorite team astrologer. And we're going to dive into the candidates and we're going to look at their natal charts relative to the date of the election and also the inauguration.
Great to see you again. Do you want to have some opening thoughts before we continue on the presentation?
My opening thought is that I always call astrology the language of compassion. So there are going to be people who are listening to this who have very heightened emotional reaction to these people that we're looking at. So I want everyone to remember that when I'm looking at the charts, I'm looking at their human design, the way they were created. So if a giraffe has a long neck, we get mad at it for having a long neck. Or if a, mouse has a little gray body, we are what we are. And I think it helps to understand these candidates by looking at their wiring system. So I just want to say that up front, that when I do these, I'm just looking at the straight facts of how they were created.
I think I should add, it's something you've said over and over, and it's right here on the front of my mind, that what you do, you're not predicting the future, but like a car, you are giving folks an owner's manual. Then it's up to us to decide how we want to drive the car. So we could still smash up the car, or we could take some of those findings, suggestions, I don't even want to call it advice, just what you have shared, and then we still have free will to live our life.
Right, which is one reason why I work with so many doctors. In my last webinar, which by the way, if anyone's interested in learning how to read a chart, I have a beginner program that I can get people up and running after just 8 hours. Pat's taken it. I've had over probably 15 doctors in my various webinars, and Pat, being a medical doctor, understands that there's something to this. And the other doctor that's really into astrology is Christiane Northrup, Dr. Northrup, the gynecologist who's written tons of books. So I think eventually astrology and medicine are going to be happy bedfellows instead of where it's been in the past where people thought it was fortune telling. And those of you who are new to me tonight, you'll understand how this could be so useful for all of us as a tool. For me, astrology is probably one of the most beautiful, peaceful things on the earth because it calms you down and you're like, oh, no wonder that person is the way they are.
Or no wonder you're the way you are.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
Let's just kind of do astrology 101. Pat, you want to pick it up?
I remember my sign and my kids' signs, and that's it. So I always have to revert back to the signs, and I know there are elements, which we'll talk about, but you see they line up in 4. So there's earth, air, fire, and water. And I've learned with my course, so now I can identify air, because I'm in the air sign, I'm a Gemini. So Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra are the air signs. And I have a daughter who is fire. She's a Leo. So my air lights her fire. And when Leslie and I kind of went through our personality traits together, it was like, I just, I can get her to explode because I'm like air to her fire. And my other daughter is water to her fire. It damps it out. And it's so funny when you think about relationships and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, that kind of makes sense because that is the way we've been living. I'll let Leslie kind of go through how the elements apply to the different signs.
What I want people to think about is what Ted said, that we're like a car and we have an owner's manual. And we all have 4 tires. So symbolically, we have fire, earth, air, and water in these 4 tires. And some of us are born with a completely flat tire. And we're going to be talking about that tonight. Some of us also have a very low tire. So if you're missing an element, it means that you're obsessed with the thing that you're missing. So you either are drawn to those things or you have an aversion to them. So for example, if you don't have water, you either love swimming, become an Olympic swimmer, or you don't like to be near the water and you never cry because tears are water. So there's always something funky about it. With no earth, people who have no earth, sometimes they hate getting massages and they don't like to cook because the body is earth. Air is all about the mind and the head. I have 0 air in my chart, so I have to make sure I stop and breathe. I was born without a lot of bubble wrap. So bubble wrap is just basically air pockets, but it doesn't mean I'm an airhead. It means when you're missing it, you actually are really good at the thing that you don't have. It's just you're kind of out of whack. And then fire is all about heat and passion and intensity. So if you have no fire, it's like being born without the ability to ignite. Like it's very difficult for you to get angry, or you get really angry. So it's very extreme either way. So again, air, no air, you might be an overthinker.
So I brought this slide in because Leslie, and when I was doing the chart and I've done the course, and I was thinking now, what was the easiest way? And Leslie had a great line. So your zodiac sign, and you'll see that on the chart. So you have the 12 zodiac signs, and the planets line up in various houses relative to your sign. So it's kind of like you have a house. So for me, I'm Gemini, somebody else is Aries, Taurus. And who came to visit me on my birth? Was it Mercury? Was it Venus? Was it Mars? Was it Jupiter? Was it Saturn? And what are the characteristics of those planets that came into my house when I was born?
So what happens is that everyone knows their sun sign, but most people don't realize that all of those other planets, all the way from Moon down to Pluto, they all have a zodiac sign that they fall into. And knowing your sun sign is really not that useful. It's like saying that you're a Ford, but I don't know if you're a truck or a Mustang. So we need to go deeper. So all of the zodiac signs on the left, so Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, those are like the interior decorators or the costume designers, and the planets are like people. So Jupiter is the planet of good fortune. This is going to be really important when we talk about Donald Trump. Jupiter's like Santa Claus. So if you have a big Jupiter energy in your chart, it's like your chart gets larger than life. You sort of expand and grow. Well, everyone thinks, well, Jupiter's so great. Santa Claus is fantastic. Well, there's something dangerous about something that just grows, 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 because Cancer, or this virus, is also a very Jupiter thing, just grows, grows, grows. So, and then other people get all upset about Saturn. It's the planet of like a drill sergeant or a taskmaster coming in, and everyone gets all upset. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's fantastic, because without the coach, you don't end up winning the races because you need that structure. So there's nothing negative about a single planet, and there's nothing negative about a chart. There's nothing negative about a zodiac sign. What we're looking at is how it all dances together. And our job is to look at the dance, or I call it also a piece of music, and realize, you know, I don't necessarily prefer, I don't really like that type of music, but I like this, and that's okay, we're allowed to do that. But we don't have a right to criticize people for how they were designed. Like I said, you're not gonna get mad at a giraffe for having a long neck.
And Leslie, let me just say to new folks to this whole practice and this understanding, we're not supposed to know this. We're not supposed to know Gemini, Mercury, Sun, air, all this. It is through you and others reading our chart, finding out when we were born, what time of day, things like that. And you spend time where you analyze someone's chart. So if you're at home and you're thinking, God, I got to write this down. Well, what, was I Mercury, or who was in my house, and all of this stuff?
We're not
Rest
doing
assured that you can just pause for a second, and you're not supposed to know this. All right.
Right, and I'm going to use metaphor to describe what we're looking at. But the reason why we want to do it this way is because well, I used to write children's books, so I'm into making things easy and fun. So we're going to look at these charts of these candidates, and just by using metaphor, you'll be able to see, oh, I see why this person is that way. It's like we're going to look under the hood of the car.
Before we get to the candidates, and we are very close to talking about them, let's just go over this one chart.
So I wanted everybody to take a minute and find their sign, and see if the keywords relative to that sign.
All of these ancient systems are all connected in some way. Like, I'm also obsessed with the Enneagram. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but that's a brilliant system of personality typing, and numerology is super interesting. All of these ancient pieces of knowledge are actually where we need to be headed right now. That's where the secrets are.
Well, let me tell you, I have a feeling that the hundreds of people who are watching this right now have their phones up right now and are taking pictures of this screen in particular. So we'll keep this up for another 10 seconds, but we are just about to launch into the charts of the 4 candidates.
So I also want to say within that, I learned how to do personality under the traditional Chinese anagrams. And what I find fascinating is that we think of things as positive or negative. And I like what you said, Leslie. It isn't positive or negative. I call them high and low traits, and they're balancing traits. So the perfectionist in me might be seen as obsessive compulsive. That might be the negative side, but the positive side is I perseverate over something till I see it to completion. So we can look at the high and low instead of taking a lot of those cue words as positive or negative. So the superficial, and the negative means, I don't care about anyone. The other one is I can look high above and look over the tops of everything and really feel comfortable with, I sort of saw everything from its the 36,000 foot view. And so that's what I learned within those personality traits of spleen and heart, lung and large intestine, bladder and stomach, and how those line up. I know, Steve, you have a lot of background in this as well, so chime in.
I do want to further emphasize the point I think that we've been making here, that there is no one sign in whatever house that is bad or all good. And it's about being balanced and harmonious with the energies that you've brought to the system. And there's a chance, depending on the energies that you're kind of gifted with, that you might be knocked off balance easier in some ways, or you might be steadier to maintain balance. And when we're talking about natal charts versus a transiting chart, that's something else I want to just mention. And there are certainly many different systems of astrology, whether we're talking tropical or sidereal, or ones that are based more on the stars and those that are based more on earth rhythms and corrections and things like that. But without getting too complicated, there are energies that many of us are gifted and we kind of have a natural predisposition and come into this world with. And then as we move through the rhythms of the universe and the earth, and we see where the stars are currently aligned, that's what we refer to when we talk about a transiting chart. And there is a tendency for people to say, oh, when a certain planet is retrograde, that means something bad is going to happen. And it's the same thing with what we're talking about with this natal chart, and that there isn't a bad or good. But when we look at things that are retrograde, it might present a time of challenge. And a challenge, you don't want to see a chart that is totally without challenge throughout their entire existence, because there's no spiritual development, there's no growth, there's no opportunity for actually, changing something about yourself to improve upon it.
Well, Steve, Leslie also says a chart that's just like that is just boring, vanilla. Yeah. You're not living any peak or valley of life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, there's so many things that are interesting about every person and how they meet the challenges that they are faced with, that there's something really beautiful that we can find in each of them, even if we have a personal distaste for a particular individual or not. And so I would encourage people to kind of view, there's the way to take it in an optimistic view when we have a challenging energy that may be transiting our current energy, our natal energies that we've been gifted with.
Now you tell us. You couldn't have told us 4 years ago, huh, Steve?
Yeah, right.
All right.
All right, let's start with Donald, okay? Pretend that this is a floor plan for a house. And this circle is like a blueprint of Donald Trump's soul. So it's a snapshot of where all the planets were at the moment of birth. This never changes. This is the way his vehicle was designed. When we see empty rooms of the house, so 1, 3, 7, 8, 9 are empty. When things are empty, it means that that area of life, those are not areas where he needs to focus. Everything with him is about this section over here and a little bit here and then this here, okay? And I'll explain what that is in a minute. What I want you to understand is if we're looking at him as if he's a car, the first thing I want to tell you is that I am adding up how many planets he has in fire. The fire are the little red symbols. So he has 1, 2, 3 fire. He has 3 water. The blue is water. This is air. This is air, 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 air. Guess what? Donald Trump has no earth. So he is driving around in a car with a flat tire. I told you I have a flat tire too. It is not that common to see people with a completely zero element, but it usually happens with people who are very talented and very intense. So Donald Trump needs earth. If he doesn't have earth, he veers off the side of the road and ends up getting stuck. So earth has to do with the body. Earth has to do also with beauty queens. So Farrah Fawcett Majors, Elizabeth Taylor, Marilyn Monroe, Kim Kardashian, they all had 0 earth in their chart and they're known for their beauty. So Donald Trump does beauty pageants. By doing beauty pageants and by being kind of obsessed with bodies, you know, that's why he will notice people's bodies. Like last week he called Adam Schiff watermelon head, or he'll make fun of someone who's crippled. It's because he's not that comfortable with the body. It's why he's also kind of obsessed with, you know, his own hands and things. The body is a place where he's kind of a little out of whack, a little wonky. He can't help it. The other thing that he's obsessed with is gold. What is gold? It's from the earth. That's another element. So he needs that. He's also not really that interested in the science about global warming, which has to do with the earth. It's not his fault. He was designed to have an aversion to the very thing that he's missing. So for me, when someone tells me, slow down, Leslie, take a deep breath, it's hard. I get upset because it doesn't come naturally to me. So what I'm trying to tell you is that Donald Trump doesn't really have a comfortable thing with earth. Also, money is from the earth, and so is real estate, and that's his focus. So you become obsessed with the things that you don't have. So for me, with no air, astrology is a very air thing. So I've been obsessed with astrology my whole life. I've been studying it since I was 19. Okay, so now we're going to look. That's a really important thing to understand about him. By the way, Hillary Clinton had no earth as well. So last election cycle, we felt very ungrounded because we had 2 candidates who were driving around in cars with a flat tire. What's really interesting is that this time, Biden has only 1 earth. So he's got 1 tire that's got a little bit more than what Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump has. But we are dealing with a lot of very ungrounded energy, which is one reason why we all feel so edgy and why the earth is just speaking to us with these fires and all these traumas and things that are happening with global warming. It's part of this whole rebalancing of paying attention to the earth.
So Leslie, saying that, you're not surprised then that 4 years ago, both Trump and Clinton, their negatives were record high negatives for both candidates running for president.
Yes. And what happens when you're around people who don't have a lot of earth, you're going to feel like you're driving around in a car that's going to end up on the side of the road at any moment if you're not careful, because you can feel that they're missing something. Something's like not quite right. But and I have it myself, I have to add air into my life with intention, which means I need to be where there's big vistas, space. I get claustrophobic. I need to have time out. Doing yoga helps. I have to constantly put air in my tire. And if I do, then the people around me will feel like they're safer and cruising around. I think it's fascinating that Donald Trump has never gotten a dog. I think he's the first president that hasn't had a dog, but he doesn't do animals, because people who have no earth, they either become veterinarians and zookeepers, or they don't want one. It's fascinating, okay?
So when you're missing something, you can go either full in trying to grab it, or
Yes.
full out aversion.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's like you're torn
Yes.
because you don't have that energy.
You don't have it at all. So you can see it with Donald Trump. He's, buying golf courses. He loves to play golf. Why do you think he loves to play golf? He's on the earth, then he's happy. He's in balance when he's on the earth, okay? That's important for him. It's what keeps him grounded. Okay, now we're gonna look at those lines in the middle. So again, using metaphor, pretend that we're lifting up the hood of his car, and I'm looking at all the tubes and the wires. When you take your car into the shop, you don't have really an understanding of what's going on. So I don't want you to think that you have to understand any of this, other than I want you to know that the blue lines are where things are easy and flowing and extremely powerful for him. What we've got going on here is massive blue lines here coming from room number 2, which has to do with money and his values, up to room 10, which is his career, where he meets the world, okay? He's a Gemini sun. He needs to shine his light out in the world. And room number 11 is large groups of people. He has 3 planets there. So he's a very outwardly focused person, and he needs to be. He's supposed to be out. This planet here, this blue one, is Uranus. And if he was an actor, he'd be like a mad scientist. It's very high energy, very electric, can be very entertaining. When you put that in the career, and it's in Gemini, which is a very mercurial kind of zodiac sign anyway, there's a lot of like flashiness with that, even though it's air. Okay, usually fire is the one that's more flashy, but with this, it's pretty flashy because all these blue lines come down here to Jupiter, which is like Santa Claus. This is major, what I'm now gonna tell you. This guy is beyond lucky. Lucky, lucky, lucky. When he said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it, it's because he's been able to get away with everything for most of his life. His belief systems, his money, lucky, 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 okay? One reason why people are very fond of him is that they feel when they're around him that this energy rubs off on them and it makes them feel great, okay? There's nothing better than being around someone who you think is the luckiest person you've ever known, because it means if you're part of his team, then you're all going to be lucky too. It's a very powerful, very charismatic thing to have. But here's the problem. The red lines are where there's tension and difficulty. And Donald looks like he has a whole bunch of them. What I'm looking for are these things. They're called squares. This one doesn't count and this one doesn't count because they're not going from planet to planet. Donald only has one major internal resistance. This is a problem. First of all, he's missing Earth, so he's a little wonky there. He's exceedingly lucky, exceedingly charismatic. But when you only have one red line, it's what Ted was saying earlier about without resistance, you can kind of get, it's like a floating kind of energy. The red lines are where you get a muscle, okay? What happened with Donald is that this particular red line, which he really needs, it actually got intercepted. And what that means is that he can't access it. And where it's hitting is his brain, right here, his brain, how he communicates, it's locked up. And it's the reason it's locked up, I'm not gonna get into that, that's technical, but just imagine that if we're on this house tour, when we get to the area of large groups of people, his brain is like under the bed. Not only is it under the bed, it's making a red line to Neptune. Neptune is the god of the undersea world. Poseidon, that's his trident. And it's the magician, the shapeshifter. I tell people who are born with this aspect that what it feels like is, it feels like you're under the water in a swimming pool. And you know, when you're a kid and you talk and you try to have your friend hear what you're saying and try to interpret it, and then you pop your head out and say, did I guess right? Did I guess right? Well, that's what he lives with every day. His ability to communicate is clouded because he's seeing his reality inside the pool. Anybody who's on the pool deck is going to be cocking their heads like, I don't understand what you're saying and what you're doing. But if you happen to be under the water with him, you're like in heaven because you're living in the mermaid world of, you know, basically this is the aspect of people who don't tell the truth too. Because it's not everybody who has this doesn't tell the truth, but you do have to, that would be what Pat was saying about the levels. There's a possibility of it. And the fact that it's intercepted under the water and an aspect of people who sometimes, it's what I call putting like fuzzy energy all over your tongue so that when you speak, you're not quite sure what's going on. But in his case, what's happening with the lack of resistance, because even though he has this, he doesn't really feel it. So I explained this to Pat the other day, that I think the best metaphor to understand Donald Trump is that he was born metaphorically like a big thing of ice cream. And who doesn't want ice cream? People love ice cream. He gives you a sugar rush because when you're around him, you're feeding off all of this high sugar content, good fortune, high energy, all that kind of thing. And ice cream is great, but the problem is Donald doesn't have natural resistance. He does not have an internal cone, which is that structure, which is what those red boxes give you. He wasn't born with a cone or a cup. So it's just ice cream all over the place, which is why it can feel kind of chaotic. This is also a very chaotic planet. But in terms of luck, in terms of personal charisma, unbelievable. And there's something to be said for hanging around with somebody who's genetically beyond lucky. Now, the one tension point he has are these all red lines here that go from his moon, which is the mother and women in fire in Sagittarius. He's got an emotional temper. The moon does not like to be in fire. The moon regulates water. It wants to be in water, not fire. And it's opposite his sun. So he's got some major conflict with mommy and women, for sure. Now, Pat told me that his mother left him when he was how old? What was the story? I don't know about.
Well, his mother got sick and he was 2 years old, and his grandmother, he lost his relationship with his mother and his grandmother at age 2. And it was kind of pivotal because he never really recovered from that loss of that relationship.
Yeah, there's definitely something going on here, but he's not really that aware of it, because when it's an opposition, you're always going to point to the other person. Oh, it's their problem. Okay, that's what that does. He does have Jupiter, the planet of good fortune, making a blue line to his moon. And he can be so emotionally warm to people. I know a lot of people who know him, they say when he pays you a compliment, you feel like you've died and gone to heaven. Because there's something about him that's got all this, ice cream feeling. It's like the good humor truck has arrived and it all just feels good. So the other thing he's got, and then I'll move on, is his male energy is in Leo, which is an extremely lion-like energy. That's how he's perceived, but it's locked up in the attic. And his reason for being born is here. So I think because of some of the imbalances in his chart, his purpose, it's kind of hidden in here in terms of an internal purpose. I'm not sure he's really aware, because he tends to project out a lot because of this opposition here.
Well, just describe the planets and what you're reading there.
Okay, so if we're on a real estate tour of Donald Trump and we're visiting all these different actors, we march around the house, we get up here, and this is like a door to the attic. And when I get to this door, Donald says, it's locked, we're not going up there. I said, well, there's some really big things up there. We walk up the stairs to the attic, and then hidden up there is Pluto. This is the planet of death and rebirth. It's the most important thing in anyone's chart. And his is feral, like a wild animal. It's like his purpose for being born is like Tarzan stuck in the attic of his life. And it's hard for him to access this deeper kind of thing that's going on here. And then his male energy is up here, which is very frustrating for him, because when a guy has his male energy locked up, it means he feels like people don't see him for being the lion that he wants to be. That's why he's got that obsession with strong men, because this planet, if he had been born 30 minutes later and it had dropped down here, he wouldn't have that obsession. But because it's here, it's making him feel frustrated that he's not being seen. He wants to be seen as the male lion. And he knows that it's tucked away back there.
At what day of what week of the last 4 years didn't he think he was a male lion? And it's just a relentless pursuit of that?
Right. Yeah, because he's frustrated that it's hidden. He's frustrated that he's not being seen. He wants his male energy to be here where people can see it. So because it's tucked up in the attic, he's constantly trying to bring it down.
Even though it looks like he's doing everything every hour to show the male energy, just inside his sign, he's not accomplishing that goal of showing the male energy?
Stop trying. The problem is he's not okay with what is. So if he was my client, I would say, you are a male lion. You don't need to prove it. You're okay the way you are. It's fine that it's here. Get used to it. He's still a lion, and he is. He doesn't have to. This is a thing that a guy will try to overcompensate for. And that's where astrology helps people to realize where they're fighting their wiring system.
You win the presidency and you still feel inferior that my male lion isn't showing?
Yes, Ted, because he can't help it. So remember I said we have to be compassionate. He's frustrated. He's a frustrated man. That's why this is very painful for a guy to have it here. Just to give you an idea of what this feels like in the reverse, I have my Venus, my feminine energy locked up here. And when I was 16, I got my ears pierced because I was so sick of everyone thinking I was a boy. And my whole life, I've had people think that I'm not a girl. And it's the way Donald Trump feels. It's just the way it is. And, you know, it's weird that it can show up in ways that are sort of painful for people. This is not a comfortable thing for a guy to have. Just like it's not comfortable for me to have my feminine energy locked up.
There's two things I was curious about just looking at this. One is the Mars energy you've noted. It's 2 degrees off from a direct opposition to the part of fortune, if I've read this right.
Yes.
And I was curious about if that's really the manifestation of what you're talking about, or if that's aspecting that in some other way. And then the other thing that I always find a little bit more humanizing for people is, and maybe it's just because I have an affinity for it, is the role of Chiron and the wounded healer. And I was just curious if you might comment on that for him.
Yeah, this is a big deal. Chiron, if this guy, this little green symbol, if he was an actor, he'd be in a wheelchair. So whenever we have him falling in our chart, that area of life, we feel like we're not good enough. His Chiron is right next to Jupiter, the planet of good fortune, so he's okay, but he's always trying to prove himself financially. So there's a little bit of woundedness there to his ego about how many times he's gone bankrupt or that his father gave him the money. There's something here that's definitely bothering him, but it's not that bad in his chart. That's not where the major issue is. His major issue is this Mars locked up, Mercury square Neptune, and not having any Earth, and then having this Moon Sun opposition. Those are his 3 big issues.
All right. I have a feeling that the hundreds of people who are watching right now have the same expression as the 5 of us.
You're all like, I don't know. Well, look,
I do want to tell people it is a language, and it's taken me a lot of time. And as I say, I need my crib sheet always to look at these. But also, I have found it incredibly helpful. I've had 3 of my 4 children had their natal charts and my own natal chart. And, we all have again, it's the high and low, that these are not positives or negatives. It's how we take the low and use that as a strength, and we take the high and use it as a strength.
All right, let's turn our attention to Joe Biden.
Joe, let's start with the House of Secrets too. He's got his Sun in Scorpio, his Mercury in Scorpio, and his Venus in Scorpio. It's a lot easier for a man to have his Venus locked up than it is to have your male energy locked up. So Joe is really a behind the scenes kind of guy. He doesn't crave the spotlight. He really does not. I think the reason that he's doing this has to do with his son and with what he's gone through in his life. This is his reason for being born, Pluto. And it's making a blue line here to his front door, meaning he was born to be a revolutionary change agent and to make a difference. Now, he's got something that I also have in my chart. This is one of the most painful things a person could have. If this is the planet of death and rebirth, and it's making a red line in a square. Remember, I said Trump doesn't have any? Well, Biden's got a couple of them. It's making a square to his moon. This is his only Earth. Thank God he's got this. But this is the death of a woman. It's the that's the loss of his wife and of his daughter. This was exceedingly horrific. And this is in the area of children. So losing the wife and the daughter karmically, it didn't have to happen, by the way. You cannot always, like I have this same aspect, and my mother's mother died giving birth to my mother. So there was a death of a mother, but my mother never recovered from it. So it still shows up in my chart. So sometimes it skips a generation, but for him, we know what happened, and it was really awful. He's got, his male energy is in the area of large groups of people. And it's feral, F-E-R-A-L. So he is like, he needs to be free to do whatever the heck he wants to do. And he likes being out in the world with people, because that's large groups of people. His career, he's been extremely successful. Neptune is the wizard, and it's got nothing but blue lines. So and that's the area of work. He's able to pull off magic and pretty amazing things. And he was also born lucky, because this is Jupiter, like Santa Claus, the planet of good fortune, all blue lines to all these planets here. So like Trump, he's a pretty lucky guy, but unlike Trump, he has personally gone through really internally painful things. And you see this big blue square, red square here, and all this. He has not had always the easiest time, and we already know that from what's happened to him in his life. And like Trump, most of his stuff is above the horizon line, so he's out in the world. He's meant to be in service, which he's been his whole life, and I think that's why he's running for president. But it has not been easy, and I do not think it is always easy for him to be in the limelight. I think it was easier for him to be a vice president. And it's interesting when we look at Harris's chart, what goes on with that. But
before we do that, Leslie, you've mentioned twice if Donald Trump was an actor, Biden was an actor, he wouldn't be a mad scientist. What would he be?
He would be more of a wizard or a magician. That's a great question. So Donald has an outer planet right next to his sun. So that's where you get that archetype for him. For Biden, the outer planet that's really making a difference with him is this one, Neptune. This is the one that's really difficult for Trump, but for Biden, it makes him be like a wizard. But he's a much, much softer, more internal kind of, that's why Trump calls him Sleepy Joe, because he's kind of locked up in his little turtle shell. He's more of a little turtle. You know, it's different energy. So Donald is like this ice cream kind of thing, and Joe is like this kind of emotionally tender, wounded person who doesn't really crave the limelight, but he's in service to being a wizard with his career and his work to do something and to regenerate. But he has not had the easiest life.
So what do you think of someone of his planets being an earth element?
He just has one earth, which means that he's driving a car with a tire that he has to be very careful that he stays grounded.
Okay. Oh, water. I'm sorry. He's in
All the water,
all the water.
very emotional. 4 planets in Scorpio, and then Jupiter's. He's got a lot of water. Very sensitive, very emotional, very much feeling kind of energy.
Leslie, is Biden's chart simpler than Trump's chart?
In terms of the inner awareness, yes. Trump, it's very difficult. It's not his fault, everyone. It's very difficult for Trump to see any of his failings or some of the inner mechanism things going on. It's not really easy for him to access that. And that's where the problem is. It's just, he rides on that blue line of being made of ice cream, and everybody loves him because he's like he's got this charming kind of energy, and that, but internally there's something difficult going on there for him. And I think that it's not always easy to have a chart like that.
Well, and let me just put a footnote on this. You say that people feel good when they're around him. I've been around both George Bush and Bill Clinton. You feel good when you're around a president, period. Okay? So every president must feel like the ice cream man in some way. Does Biden have any ice cream man?
Well, he does, because he's emotionally, his moon is in Taurus, which is one of the best places for the moon to be, and he's very emotional. He connects. So water molecules like to connect with other water molecules. He likes to connect with people in a totally different way. No, he's a feel-good, softie, but Donald is definitely more flashy, flamboyant, and more visibly addictive, basically, because sugar is addictive.
So one question from our attendee is, does luck play out each time? And therefore his luck will always trump all other aspects of the interface.
Well, that's where we look at the weather, the transits that Steve was talking about. We want to see on election day what's happening with his luck.
Stay tuned. We will get to that as the answer.
We're going to get to that. All right. So let's move on, because we're going to be here all night if we're not careful, because I could talk for hours. Do you want to bother with Pence and Harris real quick, or what do you want to do?
Yes, I think that we teased Pence and Harris, and because they're not as known as the presidential candidates, let's just go through them since you did the work.
Okay, so here's Mike Pence, who I can't believe is a year older than me. It just freaks me out. Okay, he also has his Pluto locked up in the House of Secrets. So his reason for being born is like Donald. They're kind of like on a mission that's really kind of top secret in a way. His Chiron is here in the area of day-to-day work life. So it hasn't always been easy for him to feel his purpose, but this is career, all Gemini planets, Sun, Mercury, and Moon. He's a total air Gemini person. He does have Earth in his chart. He does have water. He does have fire. So he's got all the elements. So that's good. He's not as lucky as Donald. He doesn't have the kind of internal conflicts that Biden has. He's got a much simpler kind of wiring system in terms of for him to drive his little car. Where his biggest problems lie, believe it or not, and I know nothing about this part of his life, his sexual energy is in the sign of Leo. Whenever you have the Venus and Mars together in the same zodiac sign, that's very intense sexual energy. And it's making a red line, one of those squares to Neptune, that planet of illusions and delusions. So I don't know enough about him, and he's not my client, so I don't know what the heck's going on with that, but I find that kind of interesting. Other than that, he's more like a Ford truck compared to the other two we just looked at. He's not as complicated in terms of the inner mechanisms of his chart.
So when you say sexual energy, one of the things that people talk about is that he said he cannot have a meeting with another woman unless someone else is present.
I'm telling you, there's something very strange going on. And again, Neptune is that undersea illusions and delusions. It's the thing that Donald has connected to his brain. He's got it connected to his sexuality. There's something going on here that's just not normal for a grown man to never want to be alone in a room with a woman. I mean, I don't know. It's definitely unusual. I don't know what that's all about because he's not here to talk for himself. But
so Leslie, do you think it's a positive relationship that Pence and Trump are both Geminis, and do their respective natal charts complement each other?
Yes, they do. I'm not going to put that up because you'll get a headache looking at all these. But yeah, they're pretty easy. And Donald Trump's very lucky because Mike Pence doesn't aggravate his chart. That's what you want. You want someone who doesn't inflame the parts of you that are difficult. They seem to get along pretty well because Gemini people, he's got 3 planets in Gemini. Think about air, they can rise above and kind of be chill. That's what he does very, very well. You know, when you see him, how he talks, his emotions, he's always the same, okay? That's a very Gemini kind of thing when you have 3 planets in Gemini.
All right, let's compare Pence to Harris.
She's very interesting to me. I would say of all the people that we have looked at tonight, this is the person who has the most innate ability to be a world leader. And the reason I say that is because anytime you have a planet next to this arrow, this is called the midheaven, Saturn is here, the taskmaster drill sergeant. I think Saturn is a fantastic planet because it brings strength. It's like a general or commodore or somebody high level. And look at this big blue triangle to her sun in Libra. Libra is about fairness and balance. It's why she's a lawyer. She was the attorney general for California. Her Mercury is there. She's very bright. This is like what I call a magic carpet ride. This is her. She has Gemini rising, so she looks cool, calm, and collected. She's there to make a difference teaching, making a difference with structure out in the world. And that's pretty phenomenal for a leader to have that, a healthy leader, not a dictator leader, but a healthy leader. And then look at this big blue triangle. Here's her male energies in Leo, same as Donald. He's got his male energy in Leo, and it's making a blue line to her moon in Aries. She's fierce. And another blue line here to the part of fortune. She's got 2 magic carpet rides. And what's great about her chart is that there is nothing here to indicate that she will emotionally break down or stop at anything. She's like on a mission to bring something of structure out into the world. So of all of these charts, I think she's the most natural at being in charge. And this particular combination here is quite intense. Her Venus is in Virgo next to Pluto and Uranus. So this is the hardest thing for her. Being a woman, this red line here is like, there's been some attacks against her for being too male or being too strong. But if we take scissors and cut these red lines here, definitely if she had been a man, it would have been a hell of a lot easier for her. She has a chart like this because she was born on October 20th, 1964 at 9:28 p.m. If she was born a man, she would have had even more success probably than she's already had. But being a woman is where the power actually lies, okay? She is a very powerful woman, which that's a whole nother complicated story. Like looking at the chart of Bruce Jenner, who turned into Caitlyn, that's a similar thing where he was born a man, but he actually was designed to be a powerful woman. He has this same sort of thing that she's got here. She's designed to be a powerful woman, but it's not easy.
I'm fascinated with the question of if they were an actor, what would they be? So Trump would be
the mad scientist. He's like
right.
Like that guy from Back to the Future, where he's like all over the place. Okay.
And Biden would be
a turtle. Well, he's more of a wizard.
A wizard. Pence would be.
Pence would be. I'm just thinking about that fly. He's like something that flies above and hovers around, like a helicopter.
And then Harris would be what?
She is the word that comes to mind. She's like a commodore. She's like a general, but not a. I don't know the exact definition of a Commodore, but it's somebody who's got a specialized way to lead. And she is a Saturn girl all the way through. She's got all the elements. She's got fire, earth, air, and water. She's the most balanced of these individuals. Well, Pence is pretty balanced. But I mean, I'm fascinated by her chart because she's actually better equipped mentally, emotionally, and in all ways to be, you know, the leader.
You had mentioned that Pence complements Trump well. How does Harris complement or not complement Biden?
Yeah, it was very good. I did a whole class on this for my advanced students about right after he announced her. They actually complement each other really well. I'm not going to put up that chart. I'll just tell you that it's a good combination. What we look for is balance and that they emotionally can hear each other. Pence and Trump are a great combination, and Harris and Biden are a great combination. They work well together.
It would seem that Trump and Pence in some ways are polar opposites, right? The speculation that Trump needed the evangelical vote, so he went extreme. So what is it about Biden and Harris that complement each other, since they seem not to be as extreme politically?
Right.
Each other.
What Biden needs is, because he's emotional, because he's kind of got a little soft underbelly, because he's got what Trump calls Sleepy Joe, this kind of more passive, sort of gentle energy. She comes in and balances him out because she is a no-nonsense, take charge of the helm, and she's going to steer the ship. I actually believe that she's probably behind the scenes a very huge advisor and, you know, a corrector to keep him on track.
So she acts as a lion in a way.
Yes.
Wow. I feel like I lost a couple of pounds just through that.
Think about what I feel like.
I need to breathe now.
People don't realize how mentally intense this work is, because I have to be so careful with words. You know, I'm talking about human beings, and I'm talking about people who love Trump or people who love Biden, and I'm trying to be, you know, a humanitarian and looking at them as from a very elevated view of just, this is the way they are. Okay, that's just what is.
Does the day of the election, you know, November 3rd, have an effect on?
Oh God, yeah, because what we're looking at then is I'm like a meteorologist. I'm looking at the weather. I'm going to tell you that.
The weather where? The weather
right.
where are you looking?
Election day is one of the most difficult days. It's really, really difficult day. It's you couldn't pick a day with more heightened energy to it. So it's not a great day for either one of them. I personally think that we are not probably going to have a winner. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, because I don't predict the future. I can't.
Well, they say December 8th. They say we won't know till like December 8th.
I think that's probably true. I think there's going to be contests. There's going to be all sorts of things going on. But I will tell you this, we don't have to pull up these charts because I just know it, and it just will confuse people. I looked at Inauguration Day, and on Inauguration Day, the aspects are much, much better for Biden than they are for Trump. And Trump on Election Day has a lot of aspects to Neptune, that planet of illusions and delusions, the one planet. Remember that little Poseidon's trident that's making that aspect to his brain? On Inauguration Day, it's making difficult aspects to his sun and his moon. So it's like he's going to feel like he's in, you know, a hall of mirrors. Like, I can't figure out what's going on. That's what it's going to feel like that day. Like, how did this happen to me? That's the only thing that I can find that might indicate who will end up getting sworn in on Election Day. But there's not a whole lot of evidence that I can hold on to other than that little shred there. And also on Biden's chart, there's movement in his chart about moving into a new home. So that would be moving.
But you also brought up the aspect of the female effect on inauguration.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh, yes. There is on Election Day, and I think it's on Inauguration Day too, but Election Day, the women oh my God, it's the women that are going to be the thing that changes everything. And I don't know exactly what this is going to mean. It could even mean something having to do with Amy Coney Barrett if it ends up going to the Supreme Court. It could be that it all comes down to her vote, whatever. It's something to do with women. That's a big, big deal in deciding this election.
It just
Or how about women voting? Women coming out in
Okay.
huge numbers and voting.
That could be it too. It could be that women, the white suburban voters, whatever it is, it's women all over the place on election day.
The women could show up in the Senate like we've never seen them.
Yeah, something, yeah, like that. I'm 90% sure about all that. And remember, in Donald Trump, he's got those issues with women. You know, women are a complicated thing for him. He has a love for them, and then he's also, if you're a woman he doesn't like, he will just put you down big time.
You're nasty. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 4 years ago, if we had done this, would you have, I don't want to say predicted, but would you have steered us to, because the Hillary was up by 3% in some of these swing states.
I did. I tried to get people to listen to me back then because I was telling everybody, I don't think this is going to go the way you think. And everyone was so angry at me for being negative. And I said, wait a minute, you guys, I'm looking at the astrology. The astrology is not an opinion. It's like, it's the weather. I'm saying this is not a clear cut win. And all my friends in California thought I was so negative. They thought, you live in Florida, you're brainwashed. I'm like, yeah, right. Well, I'll tell you what's really interesting about the last election. The person who had the best aspects for winning was actually Bernie Sanders. And I think that the Democratic Party didn't want him. And I believe that if the Democratic Party had, if he had been the nominee, he would have won.
Well, I just think this has been an amazing night. I want to thank everyone. We have gone past our 1 hour.
Oh my God, yes.
I just, as we all have indicated, we could probably pull up inauguration and election day and really drill down on the square is your resistance, your strength, your opposition. So we don't look at the squares as bad. The blue lines are lucky, but if you're, like I always say to my kids, one of the best stories we tell in life, it's when things don't work out. What do you do? Go around your friend and go, oh, everything was perfect. Nobody wants to listen to you. But they really do want to feel how you...
Well, think about it. If everyone had, Porsche, it would be really boring.
Right.
It's the red lines that make a life interesting. Don't wish for an easy chart. They're actually, I think Donald Trump with all that ice cream, I don't think that's so easy.
So we're getting tons of people saying thank you. It was a great one. Stay healthy. I hope we didn't bore too many people with our little office update, but we welcome you into our practice, this is our newsroom, our town halls, our webinars, and you can check them out on our website. So thank you, everyone, and good night.
Great job. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, everybody. I feel like mic drops during this town hall.
I hope you can sleep tonight. I hope
Good night.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.